Hi, welcome to my channel. This video is the first video of a philosophy/politics series I'm planning to put out on YouTube in explaining some core concepts and helping my viewers, expand their knowledge. If you read the title of this video, you're probably a bit confused because what does a seemingly depolitical entity such as Minions have anything to do with governance and the art of government? Well, this video I'm going to talk about exactly that. This video will have 3 sections. First, I'm going to explain Minions as a philosophical concept. Second, I will talk to you about this wonderful book that I've been reading. Third, I will give you a graph diagram through which we can analyze different types of public administration styles and compare how they affect public principles. Alright, Minions. The most interesting thing about Minions is the fact that if you Google Minion memes, you will find a series of images that have seemingly irrelevant messages written on top of a picture of a minion. For example, it could be just Happy Friday, or it could be every day is a Veterans Day, or it could be something like, a woman's body is her choice. Whatever. Anything. To me, that's incredibly interesting. So I ask myself, why did society pick Minions out of all the other cartoons that are seemingly depolitical to deliver their political agenda through? Because this seems to be a trend, right? If you go on Facebook, your mom or your grandmother would probably post through Minion memes rather than SpongeBob memes. Well, in my opinion, if you watch Despicable Me, you will have found out that these Minions don't really speak. I mean, they speak, they have their own language, and they make gibberish sounds. But that doesn't really mean anything, right? In my opinion, these Minions don't have a free will. They follow whatever their leader says, and they just do it without accompanying with any schools of thought. Well, saying that, we can label Minions as the ultimate depolitical object. And it is precisely because of this society has chosen Minions to deliver their political agenda through. Because they don't mean anything, which means they can mean anything, right? So, that is that. Keep that in mind, we'll come back to Minions after a short while. Let me tell you about the book called The New Public Service, Serving, Not Steering. This book has been really interesting to me. It starts off by explaining the classical public administration, which can be attributed to Max Weber and Woodrow Wilson, and that's the traditional way in which we look at the bureaucracies. It's the idea that, there's a hierarchy of order because, objectives have to be singular. Everyone in the sector of public administration should be responsible to carry the agenda set by the political leaders. They shouldn't have their own opinions. And this is very, very hierarchical. And this is very, very based on merit. Therefore, it's not democratic. It's very, in some ways, even fascist. It also leads to efficiency problems. This has been the style of government before the 60s all around the world. And what it leads to is the fact that, if you have long-term employment, because, you can't change your bureaucrats, if you allow your politicians to change your bureaucrats over and over again, that's going to lead to a change in, objectives. It's going to lead to disastrous outcomes. And public administration, which in the traditional view is supposed to be seemingly depolitical, will lose that aspect. It leads to efficiency problems. Long-term employment means you've got your back up ahead in the government, so you're not even worried about losing your job. That's why you act inefficiently. You don't carry out plans as fast as you could otherwise if you were working in the private sector. What the book then talks about is the fact that how Margaret Thatcher was a fine line who changed this trend and said, we've got to make some changes. We've got to use market orientation and market values in shaping our bureaucratic systems. So what happened is the fact that bureaucracies began to be more fluent. They began changing a lot faster. They began changing according to market principles. People at the top were not of those who were most experienced, but they were of those who were the most efficient. And this is seemingly democratic, right? because you set up a standard that's not exactly based on your experience but on your merit. So this meritocratic system is seemingly democratic. But what the book says, it's that it's not really democratic, because you alienate, in that case, the public administration from the public nature of it, right? The public has no longer have any say in it. It's only those elite, efficient, just managers going through the things and applying it through politics. What the book then proposes is the fact that, okay, government should not steer, it should serve, as it says in the title. What this means is government should not initiate political agendas. Government should not decide on political agendas either. It should be all up to the people to decide these political agendas and implement them simultaneously. What government should do is only to provide the services and allow communication between the members of the public. To me, this is incredibly interesting. Now, how can we apply minions into this concept? This, absurdly democratic view of public administration. How can we say that minions can carry this out? Before I get there, I want to show you this wonderful diagram that I've been working on. It's a very simplified version, but I think it'll help everyone's understanding in shaping their public administration knowledge. If you look here, there are two axi, whatever, and then 4 different values: bureaucracy, law, people, and representatives. And the axes are posthumanism, humanism, this says justice, I think, justice and productivity. They're seemingly on the opposite sides. What I mean by humanism is to have values based upon the decisions made by humans. Posthumanism, on the other hand, is to have abstract principles or effective and efficient managers deciding on a public's values. Well, the basic comparison you can do with this is the difference between left and right. If you speak to libertarians, they will have had enough of people, and they don't want to engage with people in making decisions. That's why they prey upon post-human principles, such as the market principles, in making decisions. On the other hand, the leftists are more approachable, personality-wise also, and also in their political agendas and according their ideas to people. So that's an axis. And the other one is productivity versus justice. It's obvious that these are on the other side of the spectrum, because if you want a productive society, you have to sacrifice some of your liberties, some of the people's liberties, and some of the democratic values that were initially there in the society in order to be more productive. Right. Another thing I have to explain is the fact that bureaucrats, what I mean by bureaucrats is not in the traditional way non-elected government officials. What I mean by the bureaucrats that are here is non-elected officials once again, so they're not representatives, but they have power to influence political agendas made by the government. This could be in the form of a typical bureaucrat, or this could be also in the form of a very, very rich person who can use its money to impact decision making. So let's think about some countries and where they would fit on this spectrum. Well, first one that comes to my mind, because I live in Hong Kong, is China. Where would China be? China, it cares a lot about productivity. If you care to look at any of the news that go on in China, in the Chinese politics, it's all to do with increasing their output with lesser input. That's why they're so economically successful, and that's why the revolution, in the past 20 years has been so successful in China. It took over the world almost in terms of its productive sector. And China, being on the side, it's ruled by the bureaucrats and representatives, elected influencers, which there are a limited number of, but bureaucrats mainly. So it would be around here. Why is China not, why am I saying it's not ruled by law? Well, the fact that Chinese government is so successful in advancing their economic capabilities is the fact that the government and the politics of everything is extremely dynamic. They don't have a constitution in the similar sense to the American Constitution, where they have to uphold their actions based upon, right? So in that case, America definitely serve the law rather than the bureaucrats. This doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. This is just different types of government. So in that sense, government is still, by the way, on the post-humanist side, obviously, in my opinion, because it's far more dependent on independent agents supplying political parties to carry out their own agendas. And there's billions of different examples of this. So America, in that case, would be here. Let's think about on the humanist side. One example I can think about is a very typical example. It's Northern European democracies. They have basic principles of law, such as liberty, human rights, but they also base those principles upon the people who live in the country. That's why they would be around here, or around here at most. What I mean by law, I also put it here on brackets, abstract principles. Abstract principles are principles such as human rights, such as liberty, such as democracy, that don't really exist in nature, but they're human constructs that are created in the name of betterment of human society. Okay, how do we apply minions here? What can government do to work like minions, and how would that affect their movement in this diagram? Well, in my opinion, a movement towards a more minion system would include a movement from bureaucracies towards serving the people. What does this mean? Thinking about what minions are and what the book tells us about how government should function, minions don't have their own voice. They only reflect the demands of their leaders. So they're the ultimate depolitical entity. If the governments were to function this way, in respect to discourse theory, they would do the similar thing. They wouldn't have the basic principles of law they uphold themselves towards. They wouldn't have representatives of people, and there wouldn't be non-elected officials, such as government workers, impacting the decision-making system. So in that case, people would be the only rulers of a country. Everything would be based upon this postmodern idea that we cannot have objective truth. Therefore, the way to arrive at the most agreeable outcome is outright discourse. We have to speak about it, even though we can never arrive at the truth. At least by speaking about it, we reward our sense of, being part of a common goal. And that to me is really interesting. Well, one counter argument against this style of government is the fact that it never really existed, apart from a few examples, past beyond 3 or 4 months. No government abandoned their constitution or bureaucrats or representatives in the name of its own people. Because in the scale that we live in, as of now, it's almost impossible to do that. There are just so many people. You cannot ask everyone what they think about what should happen, right? So it might be labeled as a utopian or an extremely unrealistic ideology to say that government should work similarly to minions. But here's my idea to this. We live in a postmodern world, and it's almost impossible to look forward to the future and tell what's going to happen the day after today. Events happen on almost random occasions that are incredibly unpredictable. So, put it simply, we shouldn't be so close-minded against this style of government. I think we need an example of this. I think we need at least one country or one regime or one state or one city, one single community to set out their system in accordance with this postmodern style of minion government, so that the rest of the world can be inspired through it. And this is not impossible, because small communities can work together so easily. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening to me. I'm planning to put out more videos in the future, so Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell button. And I'll see you next time.